How'd you meet Joe? Even from the very beginning?
I met Joe years ago. My first initial meeting with Joe, I think I met him just walking in the offices at Def Jam. Back in those days, I say those days, damn, it was a while ago, but it was you would see at Def Jam, you would see artists just walking around in the offices, like kicking it with people that worked there. Because during that time, social media wasn't really a thing. So artists had to really play the offices. You had to really, go and talk to the person that was in charge of marketing, the person that was doing radio, that was pushing your song. You had to build a relationship with these people. Now you can kind of do that over your phone. You don't ever have to go in the office and talk to anybody. You know what I mean? So that's how I initially met him. I knew who he was just because I'm a fan of rap and I followed his career, the mixtape thing and all of that. So I knew who he was. And then years after that, a friend of mine was he was playing with the New Jersey Nets at the time. And him and Joe, they would talk online and stuff like that. And then we end up meeting up at the studio or something. And then from there, that was just, the beginning of our relationship.
Okay. And how did it come to be that he was going to start a podcast and ask you to be on the show?
Well, I mean, the funny thing is when I was doing the box office, I had asked Joe, say, yo, you should come on one day and record an episode with us, you know what I mean? And he kind of looked at me like, man, get the fuck out of here. That podcast and shit is corny. That's just how Joe is. Like he, even I would try to put him on the things early and he would just wave me off. And now it's funny we talk about it because everything I was trying to put him onto, he does in his everyday life now. Like even from the way he dresses, like I used to tell him, Joe, stop wearing your shit so big. Like stop wearing your shit so baggy. Now he wears his shit slimmer than I do. You know what I'm saying? So it's like he's just an extremist he goes from one end to the other. So it's just he started his podcast. At the time I was in Detroit working with a close friend of mine. He was playing with the Pistons at the time, Brandon Jennings. And Brandon had signed with the Knicks. Yeah. And so we came back to New York and Joe had hit me and said, yo, you should come on the show. You should come do a episode with
Hilarious.
Me. Right. You know what I mean? And at the time he was going through a transition. Marissa, she started the show with Rory and Joe. She wasn't no longer on the show. So Joe and Rory were kind of looking for, what they were going to do next. Like, are we going to go with a female? Or are we going to go with bring a male? You know what I mean? They didn't really know. So they asked me to come on. I went and did the show, and Joe, he said the people loved it. They loved the episode, and he asked me if I would come on the next week. So I was like, sure, no problem. Like I'm here. Like I'm back in the city now. So went on the next week, and then after that, it just became a conversation of, yo, you should think about like coming on full time, like just being a part of the show. And I told him as long as Rory was cool with it, I didn't have no problem with it because I didn't want to come in and disrupt what they had. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it was a change. It was a shift. Like you go from having a female co-host to now having a male co-host. And it was like, I just wanted to make sure Rory was cool with it. And, Rory was cool. Joe was like, yeah, let's do it. And, here we are.
So what goes into the preparation for the show? Because it's very difficult to, for me, I interview someone, so I kind of come in with maybe not notes, but an idea of what I'm going to talk to this person about and kind of get a free-flowing conversation. How do you build that cadence, that relationship, and how do you build that flow to talk for 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours in a conversation?
Again, for us, it's a natural thing because we know each other. Like I said, me and Joe have known each other probably, maybe 14, 15 years now, maybe. So it's, it's a natural conversation when you know somebody. Like you can kind of feed off of them. The type of mood they're in, certain things to talk about that's going to trigger certain things. That's why you see a lot of the times we get into personal, topics about each other and things like that. And that just grows the conversation, as you go. Like we have certain points that we talk about. We try to cover things that are going on in the culture, from a weekly basis. But a lot of the times there's no real super structured thing. Like I got to be honest. Like, and I think that, again, that's what people love about it is that they can sense that this is something that's not really a big production and it's not overly produced. It's really just a conversation amongst friends. And it's kind of like being let in on a group chat. You know what I mean? I like to say that a lot. Like, it's kind of like we let the people in on our group chat. You know what I'm saying? So people sit down, and even when I meet people in the street that follow the show and like the show, that's what they tell me. They like, yo, I feel like I know you. You know what I'm saying? Like we boys, like, because I listen to you so much, and the same conversations y'all have are the same conversations that me and my friends have. I hear that a lot, and that's exactly what I think we set out to do. We wanted it to feel like, the listeners and the viewers were sitting in with us, and they were part of the conversation.